This show is brought to you by Panini America, makers of the most collectible sports cards on the planet. Visit PaniniAmerica.net to start collecting your favorite college and NFL stars. And Ari, I have a pack of Panini's Rookies and Stars line here today. We're looking for Optichrome inserts. We're looking for Pandora parallels. Let's see what we get. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a satisfying
sound. Uniforms, everyone. These aren't college uniforms.
So yes, these are in the pro uniforms. Unlike we were doing Prism draft picks yesterday in the college uniforms. But we got Kirk Cousins, not a rookie, arguably not a star anymore. Christian Kirk, I love this dude at Texas A&M. Absolutely loved him. He's if you've never talked to Christian, I don't know if you ever interviewed him, Ari, but he's amazing. He's just fun.
I have interviewed him. There was a big deal when he left Scottsdale. Remember when he was in the same?
Oh, that's right. He's from your hometown.
Yeah, he was in the same class as like 3 other 5-stars in Scottsdale in the same cycle, and none of them went to ASU. I remember writing about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Just you love pissing off the locals.
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker III, the man who got the bag for Mel Tucker, but Mel Tucker couldn't hold it. Dak Prescott. We got a little Devon Chan now.
Another A&M kid.
We got a rookie rush, Marshawn Lloyd. Oh, here we go. We got a rookie. Another JJ McCarthy. I'm getting a lot of JJ McCarthy's lately.
Yeah, that's a good person to be getting.
Well, here's one of my favorites who just I have this is Tyler Lockett, and I have what's called the Tyler Lockett principle, and I'm applying it to T-Mac in this year's draft. The Tyler Lockett principle is when there's one guy and everybody knows that he's your only real threat and he still puts up massive numbers, draft that guy.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So Tyler Lockett, I was DMing with Peter Schrager from the NFL Network the other day. He said it should be the Alan Lazard principle, but I like Tyler Lockett better. So we got Marshawn Nealand and Kool-Aid McKinstry, Alabama to the New Orleans Saints. So love ripping packs. So
I got a pretty big nuke I wanted to show you that I know that you
let me see
that I got from a Prism pack that I ripped. Who's that right there?
Who is that? I can't tell.
Lagway.
Oh, that's DJ Lagway. Oh, he's wearing the practice jersey. Okay, that's why. I was like, why is he wearing a black jersey?
Yeah, practice jersey picture, but it's a rated prospect from the Panini draft picks product that you're opening. Ooh. And I ripped a DJ. So like that.
We are going to be talking about DJ tomorrow when we talk about your way too early All-America team. And you had some folks saying that was way, way too early. So
yeah, well, DJ Lagway, there seems to be this thing, and I think that I'm on board with it. But I saw somebody else tweet, I can't remember who, that said, why is DJ Lagway getting all the preseason All-American love? And like Lenora Sellers is not getting any. And I think we should talk about that. Like,
it's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. And DJ Lagway, of course, one of those guys you can pull out of the Panini Prism product. We also got some Prism hoops, Ari. As we get closer to the tournament, we're going to open some hoops packs.
That box is a pretty valuable box because Caitlin Clark is one of the hottest selling cards in all. Like, right. Even Caitlin Clark base cards are being sold for like $20 right now. So, and base cards
we can pull
worthless. So, like that. If you have a Caitlin Clark auto sitting in there, you're going to be in a pretty good position. So that'll be a fun thing to pool once we get closer to the tournament. Yeah, we have some cards to sift through here after the show. But it's a fun time, and so thankful for Panini for sponsoring us because there's nothing better than having something that you personally love also be a part of our show. So really into it. And the more we talk about it, you guys will know how big of a rabbit hole I'm in.
Visit PaniniAmerica.net. Start your collection today. Let's go to the show. Welcome to Annie and Ari on 3. And Ari, we got to talk about a friend of ours getting a new job. And it's a Dear Andy, Dear Ari day. And we got a question right out of the chute about this because our pal Jim Nagy, he was the executive director of the Senior Bowl, and you've seen him on the show a bunch. If you watch and listen to the show, you know Jim Nagy. He is the new general manager at Oklahoma. And for those who don't know how this process went down, Oklahoma had contracted with a guy named Jake Rosenberg, who used to work with the Philadelphia Eagles, who's advising colleges as they try to build their front offices. And so they wound up hiring Jim for this job, which is more of closer to an NFL general manager job than, say, what we've been calling the general manager job in college. And that's kind of where things are going right now. And so we got a question from Chad yesterday. As a Sooner fan, how excited should I be about the Jim Nagy hire? I know he's a great guest on the show, but how do you think he'll do in his role? Give us some hope. And, Chad's probably representative of a lot of Oklahoma fans, where last year did not go the way they wanted it to. It was a tough first year in the SEC. Ari, you and I have been over the reasons for it quite a bit. Part of it was, they had horrific injury luck at receiver. Part of it was they made some tactical errors in recruiting offensive linemen years ago that kind of came home to roost last year. We think by getting John Mateer at quarterback, that they changed that offensive line strategy a couple of years back, and it seems like it's probably going to help work itself out. We think they're going to be better, but let's talk about.
I'm going to warn you.
Yep.
This might be the whole show, man. This is a very deep topic, don't you think? It's a very, very deep topic.
I agree, because it's so interesting. Everybody is trying to find an answer for this personnel chief question, and also who do they report to? How big of a role do they have? How much of a say do they have? Because in traditional college football, the head coach has complete dominion over personnel. There is no, if he says that's not a take, it's not a take. If he says, I want that guy, you're getting that guy. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of how much this veers toward what the NFL looks like, or does it morph into something completely different? And that's why, to answer Chad's question, I think Jim's a really good hire for a role like this, because Jim had a different role at the Senior Bowl. He wasn't an NFL GM, but he was scouting like an NFL scout, because that's what he was before that. He scouted for the Seahawks and for the Patriots. And so he understands how NFL front offices are structured, but he also got plunged into the college world. And he's talked about it on the show. As NIL changed the way everything works, his role had to change. And he kind of became this sort of consigliere to all these people who were like, should I go? Should I stay? What should I do, Jim? Because he's known for giving very honest, unfiltered opinions, and he's well respected by everybody in the business. And so he's seen a couple different sides of this. And I don't think he's going to go in saying, I know how the job has to be. This is what it has to look like, because I don't think anybody knows what the job's supposed to look like yet.
Well, I also think that it's different everywhere too.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's talk about Jim for a second, right? I think that if you are listening to the show, you probably know who he is, but he is an NFL-ish guy that has a keen eye for talent. And I think that if you go look at who the Senior Bowl brings, a lot of people that play in that game are obvious stars from the game, but there's also people in that game that come from smaller universities that they've scouted over the year, that go to this game and then turn out to be really good NFL players, and he got them. I don't think that there is any question that he has scouting acumen, right? There's no doubt about it. Now,
right.
Oklahoma fans are viewing this, and I think a lot of people are viewing this, and I think even I am viewing this as a pretty significant and important hire, in the sense of going and getting somebody that is very, very good at evaluating. And I want to be careful here, because I don't want Oklahoma fans to think I'm being negative about what I think is a positive hire. But we have to unpack this a little bit, right? And the unpacking is talent evaluation. I'd be curious to ask him, and maybe I'll give him a call and talk to him about this, different from the NFL level and even the end of college career level to breaking down 13-year-old, 14-year-old kids. right? Like there is a difference between those two things. And I'm assuming that, from an evaluation standpoint, Oklahoma is going to have multiple people doing this job. But that to me is the one question that I would have. And then two, what are the actual responsibilities that he's going to have? Not the ones that are on OUSooners.com that they list in the press release. Like, what is he going to do from a day-to-day basis?
Well,
going to be
Billion
in charge
2000, yeah, Billion 2005 has an interesting comment here, and this is something we see in the NFL, and it's a question you ask with each NFL head coaching and GM job, and now we're going to have to start asking it with every college one. Oklahoma's GM and head coach are not tied together, Billion 2005 writes in the comment. They report to two separate entities, so if Brent Venables is terminated, it will not affect the general manager, and he will have a hand in hiring. So what this means is essentially, like, he would report to Joe Castiglione, who's the athletic director. And this is a key part of this because, Florida just hired a GM. They ended up hiring Nick Polk, who used to work for the Atlanta Falcons. He was working for Athletes First, which is a group of sports agents. And originally, it seemed like that job was going to report to the AD. When it was hired for, it became clear that job was going to report to Billy Napier, the head coach. And that is a different job. And so it sounds like the Jim Nagy job is much more similar to the traditional NFL GM job where, like, for example, the Bears, they fired Matt Nagy, no relation. They go hire Ben Johnson as their head coach, but Ryan Poles remains the GM. And Ryan Poles had a hand in choosing the new head coach. That feels like more of what this is.
And if that's what this is, then that's completely uncharted territory, right? Because the GM in college football for the past, decades has been the head coach. The head coach is the person who has final say on who's coming in, right? Like, and who they're going after, whose tape they like, who they want to take a stab on, like how to use scholarship allocation for, sure things versus position. Like the GM, who do we find directly responsible for the talent on the roster? The head coach, right? So if you now move into this role, I kind of have a hard time separating the two. Like, even if that's the case, like, there's got to be some sort of autonomy in terms of, what system the coach wants to run and what type of players they're scouting and all these types of things. I'm assuming that he would still, like, that Jim Nagy would still answer to Brent, right? Like, I don't even know how that works if he doesn't.
Not necessarily answer to, but work in concert with. Like, in the NFL, when you have now, we only notice when they don't see eye to eye, but like Brent Veach, the GM of the Chiefs, and Andy Reid get along fabulously and collaborate. Brent says, Andy, what do you need? What are you thinking here? Here's who I like. Who do you like? And that's how it's supposed to work. We notice it when it becomes like when Harbaugh was with the 49ers and he and Trent Baalke got sideways. And then it became a power struggle. So it's supposed to be a collaborative effort. And I'm guessing, you and I know Jim, like he's going to go in there and work with Brent Venables. Like he's going to go in there and say, hey, Brent, what do you need to succeed here? How can I help you? And that's the part that's going to be interesting.
The GM is not answering directly to the coach, and the GM would be around if the head coach were to be fired. Almost feels like it's undermining the position of the head coach to me. Like based on the way
because we cover college football, and this is how it's always been. If we covered the NFL, we'd be like, well, this seems pretty normal.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, and I'm not saying that it is undermining. It feels weird because to me, the CEO and the coach and the talent accumulator and the recruiter and the scholarship breakdown, like all of that used to fall on the head coach's desk. So if you're telling me now that like Brent's job is to, like, who's the main recruiter in this scenario? Still Brent, right?
I would think so.
So like,
but you know what the main recruiter is, Ari?
Money. Yeah.
The main recruiter is NIL.
Yeah, I knew we have to have a discussion too in the future about like how important are official visits anymore. Like, because that used to be the biggest
Oh,
deal in the history of the
I
world.
had a discussion with a personnel person about this the other day.
Yeah.
And I had a discussion with somebody who was actually talking about these GM jobs with that, because they said their thing was like, here's a terrible piece of inefficiency, which, look, if you want to find inefficiency, go look in a college athletic department. But why are you bringing all these people in that you know won't necessarily sign with you? Like, what's the point of that? Why do you have to have all of these people at the dinner that they're going to on the official visit? Like, why do all these staff members have to go to the dinner at a giant steakhouse where everything's expensive? Why don't you just pare it down and shave
Andy?
200 grand off the budget and buy yourself a backup offensive tackle?
Andy, how many visits did you take to Nashville when On3 was trying to hire you?
0.
Me too.
Yeah. I did not visit New York when I got hired at Sports Illustrated. I had been in the building before, but not when I was up for the job.
How many
times? The Athletic did not have a brick and mortar office when I got hired.
Yeah, they did. It was in San Francisco, and you didn't go.
Oh, they did. Okay, that's right. That's right. But I never went there.
I never went anywhere. Both at On3 at the Athletic or the Cleveland Plain Dealer even. I might have at the Cleveland Plain Dealer because I was an hour away. But yeah, so like I just feel like if that's the thing, but like, here's the most important and interesting thing to me. Who is the number one personnel person in the entire country that comes to your head? Like, who pops into your head when I ask you that?
Mark Pantoni.
Do you know what his salary was last year?
I don't.
Guess. Take a wild guess.
$450,000.
$351. Now,
which
their head coach is making $11 million.
$12 million a year. So Mark Pantoni, for those who don't know, is Ohio State's
GM.
He's their GM.
Yeah.
In terms of like if it were an NFL front office, we would call him the probably director of player personnel.
When he got the job there, it was director of player personnel, which is what all these personnel people were called.
And he invented this job. Like, Pantoni started out as a student at Florida, working for Urban Meyer when Urban Meyer was Florida's coach, and essentially invented this job. And there are multiple people who've invented it in different ways. Like Austin Thomas, who's at LSU right now, was another one who was doing it. Pat Suttis, who's at North Carolina.
Austin Thomas?
Do
you know what his salary was last year?
Oh, what's that?
$425. You know Billy Glasscock, who's at Ole Miss and used to work at Texas for a while there? $425. General manager Courtney Morgan at Alabama, who had a hand in both Washington and Michigan, was making $777 at Alabama this year, which is a lot for that position. But like Marshall Malkow, who's at Oregon and has been all over the place and is considered one of the most
of the best. Yes.
Best, right. $550. So the thing that I'm very curious about now with this, it's not just the Nagy situation, but it's also what does this mean for the people who have already been doing a really good job at that? Like with Lombardi making $1.5 million, like the entire.
And let's talk about that, because producer River asked about Mike Lombardi, who's a former NFL GM who works for Bill Belichick, and now he's the GM at North Carolina. And it's interesting because River asked, is that a similar situation with North Carolina where Lombardi reports to somebody else? No, it's not, because like Belichick's the one guy in the NFL who had full personnel control. So like Lombardi reports to Belichick.
Yeah. So the thing that is interesting to me is, if you've been to the we probably should go this year because it's in Nashville, the player personnel symposium. Have you ever gone to it?
I haven't.
It's just a kind of a meeting with all the people who work in personnel across the country. And I think that the general vibe in that room when I've gone is that we are grossly underpaid and underappreciated, right? Like, and I think a lot of the people in that room probably have a aspiration of one day being an NFL GM, because that to me or to them is the epitome of, it's like me and you being the lead, like Adam Schefter, for instance. I don't know, like what would we be? So now
Cat and PFT. Yeah.
The thing that's interesting though is if Lombardi's going to make $1.5 million at UNC, and I don't know what Nagy's making. Have they reported what he's making?
They have not. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm sure it's going to be north of $500,000. then all of a sudden the player personnel people who used to be the $30,000 to $150,000 employees that were getting raked over a barrel making graphics all day are now seeing a renaissance in their salary. And it's like, if Lombardi's making $1.5 million at North Carolina, then what the hell is Mark Pantoni worth? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what?
Well, remember,
it's always been lopsided. When Urban Meyer took the job and brought Pantoni with him to Ohio State in 2012 or 13, he said, like in his introductory press conference, or like one of the first press conferences that he did at Ohio State, that Pantoni's the most important person in the conglomerate. And if that's the case, how has he been making $300K this whole time?
Yes, it's time for that to go. Now, remember, USC just hired Chad Bowden away from Notre Dame. And I believe that the rumors were that that's a fairly high salary. Now it's USC; they're private; they don't have to say what they're paying anybody. But I think that one's toward seven figures because USC needed to change some stuff in its recruiting, and so they went and hired somebody from Notre Dame where they were doing it the way USC would like to do it.
So if this is the way it's being done at Oklahoma, then is this the way it should be done at Ohio State? Is this the way that it should be done at Alabama? Is this the way that it should be done, or are they trying to mix it up? Because like,
I think it depends. Like, I don't think anybody knows how it's supposed to be done because the system is constantly changing. I mean, it's going to change again if the House settlement gets approved and you go to revenue sharing. The system's going to change again, and it'll have radically changed 2 or 3 times over the past 5 years. So nobody actually knows what the right answer is. So everybody's trying stuff.
So I think I want to write about this. So do you think that how do you view the Jim Nagy hire? Okay, so everyone says home run. The fact that they were able to get him is a huge deal for Oklahoma. All this, everybody's saying this, but like, is this an experiment? Is this like
every one of these is an experiment?
I know, but this seems like a pretty big hack at it. Like, this is a pretty big.
This is one of the first where you've had a major college football program that looks at the changes in the sport and says, this looks more like the NFL now. Perhaps we need to consider an NFL management model as opposed to the more traditional college one.
You also have to consider the timing of it and where we are in the Venables time arc. Like, it's like you don't really, like, you're messing with, you're changing the mechanism for talent accumulation during a year in which he's probably entering like on the semi-hot seat.
But the thing is, the talent's been accumulated for this year. Like, I don't care what everybody said. Like, I know everybody you probably saw people saying last year, the spring portal is going to be incredible and wild. And we didn't say that because we would have been lying to you if we'd have said that. The same thing's going to happen this year. The spring portal is not going to be that wild. And Oklahoma, what they have right now is about what they have. So in terms of personnel, Jim Nagy's working on future years. Brent Venables has to win this year.
Yeah. Do you think that this is going to create leverage and change the position across the board at other places who have been successful? Like, Oklahoma traditionally is one of the most successful programs in college football, but there's no question that they've fallen on hard times in recent years, right? I know they had 1 10-win season under Venables, but I don't think that Oklahoma fans would be like, yeah, this is how we drew it up. So like, how does this change what happens at Miami? How does this change what happens at Ohio State or even Wisconsin? Like, I don't know. Like, this to me is like a complete departure from everything that we knew. And like, also too, if this position exists, let's say Brent Venables has a 10 or 11 win season this year, which, by the way, I think is on the table. Like, I think they might have. Deion Burks is going to have a good year. John Mateer's
a really good quarterback. Yep,
going to be better. I don't question their defense with Venables in charge. Like, I actually think that Oklahoma has a chance to be really good this year. So if Oklahoma is really, really good this year, and then they stink in 2 years, whose fault is it?
It's a good question. But I can tell you the first person to get fired will be Brent Venables. Because
is that how it works in the NFL? Are coaches just fired before GMs all the time?
Usually.
Even if you can see with your eyes that the players stink?
Well, but in the NFL, well, it depends on the situation. Like, every situation is different, and that's what you got to remember. Every situation is different in college too, because like you're talking about Ohio State. Now, I'm with you. Mark Pantoni is criminally underpaid at Ohio State. I would not change the way Ohio State's structure works because Ohio State's structure is working. Like, you don't need to change it.
So, like, that's the thing that's interesting about Ohio State. It's like, I wrote a story in 2014 at the national championship game about Mark Pantoni. So it's freaking 10 years ago. And you know how they have the media day setting?
Yeah.
You know, like how you go in and the entire team's wearing jumpsuits or whatever. In 2014, Mark was in the room when they played Oregon in the national championship game. And like, I like remember thinking to myself, like, and he had like kind of a smile on his face. It's like, God, could you imagine the sense of satisfaction of just being the small dude in the corner of the room where if you don't cover Ohio State, you might not even know who he is, who basically assembled this entire thing that brought Ohio State there. And then like you fast forward 2 or 3 or 4 years, and then Ohio State's playing Clemson in one of the bowl games in a playoff game. And I'm writing a story or reporting a story about Brent Venables being the first $1 million coordinator. And like now Jim Knowles is getting paid north of $2 million at Penn State to go do the same job there, $3 million. And then like, you're like, who do you think's more important to Ohio State's success last year, Jim Knowles or Mark Pantoni? It's like, who do you think is a bigger piece to like doing it? Now, also too, the flip side of this, and I'm not sure Mark would appreciate me saying this, but like, how important is Mark now that money is the ruler? Like, that's the other thing. Like, Mark was unbelievably important because of his evaluation and recruiting ability. But like now Ohio State can hire anybody to go out and find really good players that they want to pay, right? Like, I don't know. Like, is that weird?
Well, let me take you behind the curtain on something that I've been working on, because I'm working on a story that's going to come out probably early next month. We're trying to figure out, like, how do you moneyball in college football in the new era? And as I was talking to some people, one of the things that popped up was a compliment to Mark Pantoni that has nothing to do with him getting 5-star recruits that everybody wants. Like, the thing is, Mark Pantoni is doing due diligence that nobody even knows about on guys that are in other schools' classes that Ohio State has no room for. Like, just in case a spot opens up, somebody bails on them, or just in case somebody winds up in the transfer portal, they're ready for it. Like, that's the sort of thing that you need to be doing. Everybody needs to be doing. Not everybody does. People don't even do it well when they do have spots open. And Pantoni's doing it like watching senior film of players that are already going elsewhere, and he doesn't have room for them. But just in case it comes back around where he might need a linebacker or a running back or whatever, he knows who to look at. And that's the sort of thing. If you're good at the job, it doesn't matter how the job is structured. It doesn't matter what the responsibilities are. It doesn't matter what you get paid. You're good at the job. And we'll see how this goes, because everyone's going to be different. Like you mentioned, the NFL, like, do they always fire the coach first? Like, the Jags were a great example of this. For whatever reason, Shad Khan, the owner of the Jaguars, could not figure out that Trent Baalke was the problem. Like, that he was the general manager, and he survived multiple head coaches, even though everybody else in the league knew he was the problem. Well, sometimes when you just have the ear of the person who makes the decision and you're the one feeding them all their information, they don't realize you might be the problem. So it just depends on the situation. Every situation is different. And with these college football ones, I think you're going to see a lot of experimentation about how to handle this. You know, I just talked about Florida hiring somebody. Their model is going to be different than the one Oklahoma is using. But USC just hired somebody. Their model is going to be different too. But it's going to be fascinating to watch. It's going to be so interesting to watch because we don't know. Now, as far as Oklahoma goes, and Jim Nagy specifically, the thing I like about Jim and this job is Jim is a very curious person by nature. And he is not going to come in and say, I know how this job should be. This is exactly, it should look exactly like John Schneider's job with the Seahawks. Now, it's going to be, here are all the different experiences I've had. Here's what I've noticed over the past few years dealing with people on both sides of this equation as the Senior Bowl executive director. Here's what we can try. That, I think, is going to be really interesting. So I'm excited for him. I'm excited for him. I can't wait to have him back on. Hopefully they don't put him in a bunker and never let him talk, because he was absolutely one of my favorite guests. I know that everybody who watches and listens loved when he came on. So we'll see, Ari. It's going to be a lot of fun. We do have a few more questions, though.
Yeah, I do want to say, Andy, before we go, that I put Brent Venables on my top 25 coaches list, and you didn't, I don't think. And people were really, 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 really mad at me for that. And I don't think he's a bad coach. Their team was decimated with injuries last year. It's personnel is everything. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we are talking about the mechanism for getting good players. And if that changes, that is a seismic shift in college football. Okay. And I think we did a pretty good job of I just want to hammer that home. You want to talk about NIL, you want to talk about the expanded playoff or AQs and all the things that we talk about all the time. How could you imagine if the NFL is you know what, we're not going to have a draft anymore. We're going to do it this way. Or but that's what this feels
Just start recruiting.
It does feel like a very significant. This is a significant hire for Oklahoma, but this might turn out to be the significant hire for all of the sport. And I might write that today. So I just wanted to say that. Didn't mean to interrupt you. Love you.
No, that's great. I cannot wait to read it. And
we have a segment at the end of the show that I wanted to introduce to you before the show, but I didn't ask. But is Ari an asshole? Is Ari the asshole kind of because you guys thought I was the asshole at Costco for putting my hand underneath the wrong way and the person snapping at me. I want to know in this scenario, I have a pest control problem, how to handle this if it were beefy.
Okay. End of the show. We'll do the if you frequent Reddit, there's a subreddit called Am I the Asshole?
Am I the asshole? It would be a good segment because I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, AITA. It's very funny. The scenarios that they wind up with are hilarious. So we will talk about that in a second. Right now, we got to talk about fresh, never frozen beef, though. When it comes to making the best burgers around, the basics matter. And Wendy's, well, they've got those burger basics on lock. And boy, does it show. What is the secret to all those hot and juicy burgers? Simple. Wendy's always crafts their burgers with that fresh, never frozen beef that they're famous for. The result, hot and juicy, beefy hamburger perfection every single time. No matter what burger you order from the Wendy's menu, I'm a Baconator guy myself. You already know that thanks to those Wendy's burger basics, it's going to be exactly what you were craving. Fresh beef available in contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada. Not available in Hawaii. Get yourself a fresh, never frozen Wendy's burger today. All right, Ari. Let us move on to another question. This guy definitely thinks you're the a-hole. This is Phil. Phil says, why is Wasserman so convinced that any SEC team with a 10-2 record would have gotten in when Nicole Auerbach said that SMU was locked in by making its championship game?
I love Nicole. Is she the chief rabbi of the College Football Playoff Committee?
Well, here's the thing. Okay. He's pitting you against Nicole when you weren't saying anything in opposition to Nicole. When Nicole said what she said, Alabama and Ole Miss already had 3 losses. Right. South Carolina already had 3 losses, so it wasn't going to change anything at that point. Yeah, she was right at that point. The question that he's asking, that I don't think he understands the question he's asking, is how are you so sure that they would have had SMU behind a 2-loss SEC team? Well, I can tell you one way that I know. SMU was 3 spots behind Tennessee in the last rankings. That's a 2-loss SEC team. Now,
hey, Andy, what's today? Thursday? Tinfoil hat.
Yep.
Way to do it. Tinfoil hat Thursday. Look at me. Look.
Let's go. Okay.
I think, first of all, I think if you remove the Vanderbilt loss from Alabama's resume, they're unequivocally in. Because then they would have had one terrible loss, and it would have been to an Oklahoma team that people respect, even if they were bad. And then you would have had them beating the SEC champ. There's no way that they wouldn't have gotten in my opinion. Now, here's the tinfoil part. I think it's possible that the committee would have ranked the entire thing differently if Ole Miss and Alabama were 2-loss teams. I think we could have had a scenario where the conference champions weren't rewarded, or the conference championship game losers were not rewarded in the way that they were last year. Like, I think that because there was nobody else to go to, that allowed them the ability to reward all the teams who lost their conference championship games. But like, could you imagine if SMU would have gotten in over a 2-loss Alabama team when the SEC, like if the SEC didn't, if you removed 2 of the worst losses that they had, like, could you imagine how we would have viewed the SEC if Ole Miss didn't lose to Kentucky and Alabama didn't lose to Vandy? It would have been.
Let me give you another example, because we can go week to week and see how this worked. So, Alabama loses to Oklahoma, Ole Miss loses to Florida. The following week, Miami loses to Syracuse and is knocked out of the ACC championship game. Now, Miami was ranked ahead of Ole Miss and South Carolina, but not ahead of Alabama. So a 2-loss Alabama absolutely would have gotten in.
It would. I don't even think it would have been a debate. And here's the thing, but you know me, like I was very SMU should get in, Indiana should get in, all these teams should get in because they did their part when the SEC didn't do their part. I think if Alabama would have gone 10-2, I would have been very vocal about how Alabama should have been in.
Well, okay, let's go back a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Like, this is so, Phil, how are you so sure, Ari? Because the committee told us. Like, so this is week 12. This is the committee's rankings. So Alabama's already lost twice. Alabama's lost to Georgia and Vandy at this point. Ole Miss has lost to Kentucky and LSU at this point. They are sandwiched around a 1-loss Miami. So Alabama with 2 losses is already ahead of a 1-loss Miami. They are both ahead of 1-loss SMU. And far ahead.
Away.
Yeah. So Ole Miss was 4 spots ahead of an SMU team that had 1 fewer loss. So how are you sure, Phil? He's sure because the committee told him.
So here's the thing and I don't want to sound condescending or an asshole on this. Okay.
Yeah, you do.
I really don't. But it blows my mind, like, how hard it is for a lot of people to know what the committee is going to do. Like, we do talk a lot about, like, every Tuesday night when we come on, when they release their rankings, like, we have been covering this and maybe we think about it all day and that's why we're more seasoned with it. But, like, we basically have an idea of what they're going to do. And like, that to me is because they value quality wins and they hurt you with terrible losses. And you can put it together. It's a puzzle. You can put it together. And I will say that they did depart from their usual protocol this year in terms of the rewarding of the conference championship game losers. But for the most part, like, remember when I got into that big fight with all those Tennessee fans about who would be ranked higher? It's like, I wasn't trying to be antagonistic. It's like, this is how they operate. Like, it's like very clear how they operate on a week-to-week basis. And the last thing I wanted to say is that, like, the one thing that I will agree with, and I want to give an olive branch to SEC fans, even Brad from Macon, I hope you're listening. I think that the SEC does play a harder schedule than the teams in the ACC play, right? Like, I think that's a fair thing to say. And I think as a result of that harder schedule in the imbalanced schedules that we have in this sport, that you are rewarded with more breathing room in the form of an extra loss in order to get in if you possess quality wins. So Alabama at the end of the year, after getting blown out by Oklahoma, was a completely different team from a perception and resume standpoint than it would have been had it had one bad game. Like, if they would have erased the Oklahoma loss or the Vanderbilt loss, they would have had one bad game with a pretty impressive win. And that, to me, would have been enough. And you would be rewarded for playing that SEC schedule, traversing that tough schedule, winning 10 games, and having a quality win. Like, that's the way the system works. So the fact that they had the quality win got discounted at the end of the year, which is what people didn't understand because they had an extra loss. But if you remove that extra loss, their resume is better than Indiana's and better than SMU's. And then at that point, which we return back to the tinfoil hat part, is how do you reward Indiana? How do you reward SMU? And even how do you, to a certain extent, reward Penn State with a pretty high ranking when you lose those games, when you have teams like when you have teams like Alabama and Ole Miss sitting there at the end at 10-2 with quality wins that those teams didn't possess? Because Penn State didn't have any quality wins during the year either, remember? Quality wins are the most important thing that you can do, but you cannot lose too many games because then you lose those wins. If you have 2 losses and great wins, the great wins matter more than the losses. If you have 3 losses, you're out, unless there's nobody else in there.
Well, so Matt Rule went on with Urban Meyer on Urban Meyer's podcast and was talking about, why should I ever play a tough schedule? Like, we beat Colorado and the same week Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. Like, what does it matter? I'm like, yeah, but Notre Dame didn't lose again, and you lost a bunch of games. And like, so also, maybe that had something to do with it.
Why do we have to continually explain to people the value of attaining a quality win? The reason why you schedule big games is because when you get those big wins, it forgives future blunders. Like, that's the point of having good wins. Good wins. What is the number one metric the committee cares about? Good wins.
Good wins.
Right? Good wins way more than bad losses. Now, you can't have too many bad losses, but like, this is not that difficult. And like, there's no way that you could definitively like change history and be like, this is what the committee would have done if this happened. But like, I am certain that Alabama and or Ole Miss would have gotten in at 10-2 with the wins that they had, both of which.
So, breaking news from our guy Ferris Khan, who's a Michigan fan. Michigan AD Ward Manuel declared that 75% of the $20.5 million revenue share will go to football. The other 25% will be split between other sports. I wish more went to other sports. And his explanation for this is, if revenue share goes 75% plus for football schools, basketball schools like Connecticut and Gonzaga can outspend them in basketball. Okay, here's the thing. Football makes more than 75% of your revenue. The other sports should feel lucky they're getting anything. Like, football makes almost all of the money,
and I like
make some of it.
Smash the Numbers is here every day, and I love the guy.
Yeah,
first college football fan I would ever hear make that comment. I know what people care about.
Let Connecticut and Gonzaga have their thing. Let them have it.
Like, I don't know, like, if there are a lot of Michigan fans out there that are like, well, we're not going to have enough money to compete in basketball. I think that basketball is a completely different animal, and if you can buy one really good player, then you have a chance. Like, it's completely different. If I were a Michigan fan, I would want all of it to go to football. Like, I don't know. I would want 95% of it to go to football and leave just enough for men's basketball to get some players and maybe make a run in the tournament. But like, I don't know if this is true everywhere, Andy, but I'm assuming that a run to the Final Four for UConn means more than a run to the Final Four for Michigan would be. And I'm not saying it's not fun and that Michigan fans don't enjoy it, but like, I got to remember this. Like, when I covered Ohio State basketball, I covered some really good teams, like early in my career, teams that went to the Final Four. I've covered the Final Four before. And I wrote a huge, do you remember D'Angelo Russell? I mean, obviously, he's
absolutely.
I wrote this. I talked to his dad. I went to Louisville, where he was from, and I wrote this huge profile on D'Angelo Russell that dropped on the morning of the first day of the tournament. Like, I was like, this is going, like how newspapers used to do it, like have a big feature, a big story the day an event happens. And that was also a newspaper idea, but at the same time was at a place that tracked your metrics. And the hardest part about my career back then was I was covering recruiting, college basketball, and football at the same time, which shouldn't really be one person's job, I don't think. So like the same day the tournament started, like Ohio State's backup left guard like tore his ACL or something, and I wrote a quick like 200-word story about that for the website, and it did like 50 times better than the D'Angelo Russell story that I worked 6 weeks to report. And the moral of the story is that like Ohio State loved the Final Four runs, and they have fans that care about basketball, but it is nothing. It is a drop in the bucket in comparison to what people care about when it comes to football.
I had a when I was working at SI, I would always kind of pick the first weekend site based on what football schools I wanted to go visit nearby. And so I can't remember what the first weekend site was, but it was near Austin. So I went and did a Texas story. It was Mac Brown was still the coach. And so I had a Mac Brown going into spring practice column. And then it did like 10 times what my game story off the Sweet 16 Kentucky-Indiana game that weekend did. Like 10 times.
I think college basketball is fun. I think people love watching it. Here's the difference between college basketball and college football to me. Like, I cannot wait. I'm going to Vegas for the first round of the NCAA tournament. I'm just the Thursday to Saturday. I'm just going because I go with my wife and friends every year. It's kind of a tradition. And I cannot wait to watch the games, to bet on the games, to drink all day, go to the pool after the day. Like, it's going to be an amazing 2 days. But at the same time, I spend zero time reading about it. Like, I spend zero time thinking about it. The event is the event, and I enjoy watching the event. But like with football, we have to have a 30-minute conversation right now about whether or not Jim Nagy is going to shift the paradigm of the way that personnel directors are. Like, does that exist in basketball at all? Like,
it does. I think it does in the NBA coverage. Like, there's a really dedicated hardcore NBA fan base. There's a dedicated hardcore college basketball fan base too, but college basketball is different in that it has the best tournament in American sports. And I think it's so weird because it's a small hardcore fan base during the season that explodes into the national consciousness as the season ends. So that's the part that makes it really interesting.
National consciousness is an obsession with the event, not an obsession with the sport.
Right. But the event is coming, so you got to get ready for the event. But there is money to be made. I mean, look, I was watching a lot of college hoops last night, and I'm looking at the crowds, and anything that draws 12, 15,000 people a game, which a lot of these, like these Big Ten and SEC schools are drawing right now, there's big money in that too. Like, it's still good money.
I'm assuming
it just doesn't make football type money, but it makes good money.
But I'm also assuming too, and I'm not trying to undermine like Kentucky fans and Duke fans. I'm assuming they're on message boards every day, like, which shooting guard are we going after?
Right. They treat it the same way. And Kentucky fans are interesting because I think they get sort of painted with a broad brush. Oh, you guys just care about basketball. They're the one I would point to that cares as deeply about basketball and football. And they're the same, kind of the same. And I'm glad we have KSR on our team.
Yeah. Here's a take though. Because Vanderbilt basketball has been pretty good at times in the past, right?
They beat Texas A&M last night. Big upset on the road.
I guarantee you the vast, vast majority, if not all, Vanderbilt fans had more gratification in beating Alabama than what happened last night, right? Like, I think,
of course,
I think that a run to the playoff I'm even wondering, let me ask you this. You can do a poll. Do you think Indiana fans got more gratification out of their football run last year than they did from their basketball runs? And Indiana's a basketball school.
Well, I'm not sure. Like, Indiana students, I don't know. We'll have to have Talia Goodman on, our women's basketball reporter, because she's an IU grad, like recent. Like, I want to know, do Indiana students remember when Indiana was good at men's basketball?
Do you think if you ask the average Indiana fan or Indiana student, would you rather your team make the Final Four in football or basketball next year? What do you think they would pick?
Oh, I think they'd pick football.
And that's a basketball school.
Yeah.
That's the point of it. And I'm not trying to shit on college basketball. I'm just saying, like, it's just not the same. The event is the event, but it's not the same. And that's why I go crazy every single time you or anyone else compares football to basketball, because it's like, that's not.
I never compare it to basketball. I always say football is football. Actually, let's throw this question in from Chris in Phoenix. Andy, I'm stealing this from a YouTube comment I saw on another show. Is college football going to destroy itself in the same way that NASCAR did? Can you see any parallels in this analogy? Admittedly, not a NASCAR guy, so I can't take that leap myself, but you are a redneck from the South, so you might have some authority to speak upon this. Actually, Chris got it from
NASCAR, so you do your thing. I'm going to duck
out.
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. Chris got it probably from a comment from Matt, the Georgia fan on this show, who says it all the time and says it to me on Twitter all the time. And I always say, no, it's not like that, because racing's racing and football's football. One is boring and sucks, and one is awesome. Like, what happened with NASCAR is around the turn of the century, NASCAR was booming as it got a better TV deal, got exposed to more people. And they thought, okay, NASCAR is going to be able to take on the NFL someday. But NASCAR had a fixed ceiling on it. And that is people who like watching car racing. It's just, it's not that many people in America. In the world, it's bigger because you have F1.
Well,
but
F1's
that's different.
Big, isn't it?
F1's super boring, just like soccer.
I know, but
so it makes sense that these people in other countries would like it. So
Going to a NASCAR race would probably be fun, but watching it on TV,
Nope.
it's like it's
I
not.
can attest. Nope. I went to one. I went to the Homestead race. Now, look, it wasn't a restrictor plate race, so I realized the ones in Daytona and Talladega are supposed to be more interesting because they race like 4 wide and they have crashes and stuff. But like the girl in front of us at the one I went to flicked off Jeff Gordon every time he drove by. There were 200 laps, like double birds to Jeff Gordon every time. And then I forget who she liked. Or no, she was Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart double birds every time he drove by. And I forget who she liked, but whoever she liked, she'd every time. 200 laps.
You know what I don't
Dave's
get?
here in the chat says NASCAR made it unwatchable. No, what made it unwatchable is there's a bunch of cars turning left and the lead never changes.
So here's what I don't understand, because like golf is super popular now. Like golf is
And also boring.
yeah.
Yeah.
Golf, like watching the Masters, the weekend nap with the Masters on in the background is the best nap in America. Like it's the best nap ever. But the thing I don't understand about individual sports and tennis and other things that people get excited about is like when you root for Michigan, you're a Michigan man, you're from Michigan, you went there in most cases, like you are a Michigan person.
Right.
Like when you root for like NASCAR, it's like, yeah, I just like Jeff. Like, why? Like, what do you like about Jeff? Or, like,
Big fan of Bubba.
Why are you rooting for Zalatoris in golf? Like, you met the guy? Like, why are you just rooting for like Steve? Like, I don't understand. Like, I understand like if you're
I would argue NBA fandom is similar to that now too, because NBA fandom feels more player driven than
no, I know, but like
driven.
Utah Jazz fans show up for Utah Jazz because they have Salt Lake City pride. Like there's like
they're not showing up this year because they
no, I know.
stink.
You know what I'm saying? Like when you root for a team that has your city on it, it's a civic pride. I understand that. Like when you were rooting for college football team, that's your freaking school. You have pride. But like, why are you like an adult sitting in a sports book being like, oh, I hope Tiger wins? Who gives a crap if Tiger wins today? He's a millionaire. Who cares? Like, I don't have any connections to the people. Am I nuts?
No, you're not. The Tiger thing to me has always been fascinating because I've had favorite athletes.
What did he do? Why do you like or not like him? He's just a dude in a car, a short guy, from what I understand, too. A short king. You got to be a short king to be a NASCAR driver, right?
I think it helps. But the Tiger thing never made sense to me. Like people are like, "Oh, Tiger's playing this weekend." So, like, okay,
like, that's the thing. I understood like Tiger in his peak,
right? When he's winning the Masters by 1 billion strokes, yes.
Or if he's like if you want to watch somebody play well, but like Tiger Woods' odds in gambling now are so off because so many people want to bet on him and root for him, and it's like, what personal connection do you have to Tiger? Like I have friends who are like, I can't wait to watch Tiger today. And it's like, first of all, he's not good anymore. Second of all, he hasn't been like the best dude in his life. Like, I don't understand.
I think they're just reconnecting with a piece of their formative years.
Yeah. But
that's
like,
so like friends of yours, your age, were Tiger Woods. So I was in college when Tiger won the 97 Masters. Like, so you guys would have been in late elementary school, early middle. So these guys would have been in high school, early college when Tiger was at his most dominant.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. All it is. And this, I think we figured it out, because this is the same way with our teams and our sports and our formats for our sports. It was better when it was like this. We like whatever it is was going on when we were 17 to 23 years old.
It is
that
true.
That was perfect, and everything else sucks.
Yeah, it is true. Yeah, but like I just like I don't know if it's just me, but I've never had like a personal connection. I like wet blanket here. I root for Ricky Fowler and Victor Hovland because we are all Oklahoma State alums. See, like I understand, like again, civic pride. Like I get
giant
that.
Garth Brooks fan, I assume then too, right?
Yeah, and like
also former Oklahoma State javelin thrower.
You're also talking to somebody who knows, like I know less about NASCAR than I know about like physics. Like I don't know anything about NASCAR. But like Dale Earnhardt Jr., God rest his soul, is like
he's alive. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is alive. Senior's the one who died.
Senior, not Junior. Sorry, but Dale Earnhardt Sr. is like a folk hero in the South, right? Like people look at Dale Earnhardt as like one of the greatest individual athletes of all time. Is that a fair
Ari,
assessment?
there are cars in the town where I live that are still painted up with the number 3 Goodwrench.
So educate me then on the Southern connection to Dale Earnhardt. Like, what was he like? Why did this happen?
I mean, he was
Was he
beloved
Tiger
because
Woods
he
in
was
NASCAR?
the intimidator. He was kind of viewed as a rebel. He had a very aggressive driving style. Like, I'm not the right person to ask. I get that I was born in South Carolina and lived in the South, and my mom's from Alabama and all that, but like it never landed with me.
Yeah,
it just didn't.
I'm not saying that you should.
But here's I'll get back to the original point, Ari. The original point of the question, where I say it won't happen to college football the way it happened in NASCAR because college football is awesome and NASCAR is boring. Like, I've never met a person from the South who was like, yeah, college football isn't the land for me. Just doesn't seem like, if you like sports and you're from the South, you like college football.
Yeah. It didn't land for me. I'm not saying you shouldn't like it. And like, I also don't like that NASCAR changed the rules to make it less exciting, because like, that's what like hockey has done things right to change rules so there's more scoring in it. It's like, I think soccer is the most boring sport on the face of the earth, and it's the most popular sport on the planet. So like, I mean, what I think doesn't matter. I've always been curious to personal connections with other people that you don't know. That has always been kind of weird to me. And it's like, it's funny because somebody like mocked me for my card collections, right? And it's like, I have this DJ Lagway card I showed you here.
You don't know him.
I don't know DJ. Well, I actually have met him. And
you have met him, yeah.
Like, I'm not holding this DJ Lagway card because I like have a picture of him in my house and I love him so much. I'm holding it because I think he's really good. He plays for a really high profile team, and this could be worth a lot of money one day. Like, that's what drives me. So like, I don't know. Yeah, I might have just alienated 80% of our audience, and I'm sorry.
I don't think you did.
I don't get it. I just don't get it.
I don't think you did. All right, one more question. This is from Illini Ever So True. It's 2 questions, but I actually think the person in the second question is the answer to the first question. Who is the new voice amongst coaches in college football, and can Illinois sustain the success under Brett Bielema in the long run? So I do think Brett Bielema probably is going to be the most outspoken of the coaches. I think maybe Matt Rule is one that we'll hear a lot from. Trying to think of anybody else who comes to mind.
There's a difference between loudest and funniest and voice. Like when Nick Saban spoke about things, people heard and listened. Like Nick Saban was the unequivocal voice of our sport, right?
But I'm talking about among other coaches. Because I do think other coaches respect Brett Bielema and Matt Rule.
And other coaches, yeah. But I'm just saying, like, which is the coach when he says something, people sit up to listen? Because I don't know. I think Kirby Smart would be the person, but Kirby Smart never does it.
Yes, he does. Just doesn't do it publicly. So Kirby Smart's been on the NCAA football rules committee. Like, he's been in those roles. He just doesn't do it publicly. He does it behind the scenes.
Nick Saban complained about things publicly all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
usually to make sure it would benefit Nick Saban's team.
No, I know, but I'm sure Kirby's pretty big on the rules that help Georgia too behind the scenes. But I'm surprised that there's no coach out there who throws his weight around in a public forum in order to be the voice of the Deion Sanders has more public comments right now than anybody about things. And you might not like Deion, but like Deion Sanders might be the biggest voice in the sport right now.
Well, one of the ones among the coaches back in the day was David Cutcliffe when he was at Duke.
Yeah.
Because he was one that everybody respected. He spanned multiple generations. Like, he had worked for Bear Bryant. And so I don't know who that is right now, although I do think Bielema is one who is not shy about giving his opinion, whether it's publicly or to other coaches.
But also, you have to acknowledge the one thing that has to happen for it to be taken seriously. Like Brett Bielema holding his arms out at a bowl game on a sideline. I mean, if Illinois makes the playoff this year, you got to win. You got to win, and you got to win big in order for people. Like, that's the thing. Like, Nick Saban said things, and people took it seriously because Nick Saban was a winner, and Nick Saban knew how to build a program. And like You remember like when you and I were at the Athletic and Nick Saban like dropped that Jimbo Fisher comment. You remember that? Or that A&M comment? Like,
what a day.
Has that
I ran in this room and like, Ari, we have to do a show right now.
Has it happened since?
The next day when Jimbo Fisher went berserk.
No, but what's the closest thing we've gotten to that? It was Brett and
Shane
Beamer. Like
Shane Beamer.
Who else? So, and I know there's a difference between feuds and disputes and things. I mean, Kirby Smart, what he said about Johnny Manziel could have been about a rule or a coach or something. Like no one cares. And it didn't really get as much traction as maybe it would have had it not been about Johnny Manziel, and it would have been something else. But like, I think that like when Kirby Smart speaks, if he like were to use his time at the Georgia podium to bring up an issue about college football rules that should be changed or that he doesn't like, people would listen to that, digest it, and debate it. And I don't know that there's other coaches like
River chimes in with Dabo. I think people listen to Dabo. I don't know that they listen to Dabo as intently because
he
some of the things some of the things he said, I think he was being a little hyperbolic, and now it just looks different. But I think when Dabo's when he's not being hyperbolic, when he's really getting down, because I always bring up the interview he did with Roddy Jones last year at the ACC spring meetings, where he very, accurately explained their situation with the transfer portal. Like when Dabo gives you a good, thoughtful answer, it's usually very interesting. And Dabo's a very smart guy. So like, I do think him, and he's won enough that everybody's going to be, okay, we'll listen to you.
Yeah. Dabo has gone on too many hyperbolic rants that turned out to not be true though.
Right. And you can't say the stuff about, I don't want to work in an environment where players are getting paid. Right. Like you do, and you are. So
yeah. And then he said last year that he never said that, which is hilarious because it's like it was filmed and quoted. But yeah. But Kirby would be my number one person if he wanted to throw his weight around. So and I think he should.
And as for the second part of the question, can Illinois sustain success under Brett Bielema? I think so. But it depends on how you define success. If Illinois is realistic about how it defines success, then yes, I do think it's sustained success, because what success would be at Illinois historically is every once in a while you have a year like last year, and maybe they equal that or surpass that this year. But if that happens, there's probably a little dip after that, and then you come back to this in a couple of years. That feels to me like what success reasonably would be called at Illinois.
Yeah. I'm with you. And I think that Brett, the thing too is like, I think that like there should be an influx or and I think maybe even from a media standpoint, like I think people are so afraid, and this happens at the player level too, of saying something that's going to get scrutinized or blow up in a negative way. And it's like, I think we need to embrace personality. I think we need to celebrate personality. Like I can't stand that players can't celebrate on the field. Like I think that like we should, if you have something you'd like to say or you want to talk your trash, then do it. Again, entertainment product, entertain us. Say the thing.
Well, I remember like when Will Muschamp was coaching at Florida and South Carolina. So if you've ever been around Will Muschamp and he's not on camera, he's one of the funniest human beings in the world. And he grew up idolizing Steve Spurrier. And so he wanted to kind of be like that as a coach. But his thing was, I'm not going to do that unless I'm winning big, because that's the reason Spurrier got away with it.
Yeah.
And he never got to the point where he was winning big enough to really do it. And I feel like that's just an opportunity lost, because like that guy unfiltered just going would have been hysterical. It would have been awesome.
Everybody's different than they are in front of the camera. Everyone. And I don't know why.
What?
Even I'm different sometimes.
You are not in the least bit different. All right. We got to go with Ari's question to the audience. Is Ari the a-hole? This is a new recurring segment. So
I walk around, Andy, with an existential dread that like I'm the problem, because like I feel like I there are, I know you're not supposed to curse, but I have to in this instance, so please forgive me. I think once a day to my head, am I the only one seeing this shit? Like, I think, like, or like, am I the, like is that like a you thing too, or am I the only one who does that? Like, I feel like
everybody does it. Everybody does it.
All right. Because it's like,
you're not that special.
Like, what the hell's going on here? So anyway, here's what happened this morning. So we have a leak that came through our roof. Or like the first floor, it's above our bathroom. We have a leak of some sort coming from the bathtub. And I need to have a plumber who's coming today take a look at what the source of the leak is, and we might have to file an insurance claim, and it's a whole thing. But as a result of the leak that happened, we had to cut a hole in the ceiling of the first floor thing in order to try to identify what the leak was coming from and to get the wet drywall out. And now there's a small hole in our ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And after this has happened, and I don't know if it's related or if it's not, we've had a bunch of red flying ants come into our house. It's not like an insane amount, but like there are bugs in our house, and like my wife has no temperament whatsoever. We talked about it for 25 minutes last night, over and over and over again. I was like, Brent, I got it. We're going to call the pest guy. He's going to come tomorrow and we're going to figure it out. So we have a recurring, and like you've been to my house, Andy, we are not in a traditional neighborhood. Like behind us is a nature preserve. So like we have probably more exposure to wildlife and insects than other people do. So it's going to be, I think, just par for the course of my job or of this house, like that from time to time, like bugs might come in.
I live in Florida, Ari. We deal with critters all the time.
Okay. So, and it's not the end of the world. Like it's just maybe 10 ants that we saw. But it's something that we want to take care of because we have a daughter and we don't want her to get stung or, whatever. So I call the pest company that we have today. They come every quarter, like everybody else who has pest company, and they spray the house and do what they do. And I said, hey, we have an infestation of insects in our in our bottom floor that may or may not be coming from the ceiling or a hole in the bathroom or whatever. Can you please come out here and do it? And they're like, sorry, we don't have same day appointments. I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like that, like, how do you not have same day appointments? Your entire existence is to stop vermin from coming into homes. And when vermin do, people want them out of their homes. They don't live with them. How do you not have same day appointments? So now I'm like, I'm going to call them after the show's over and be like, forget you. I'm going to go to another company that can take care of our issues when they arise, because that's why you exist. Am I the asshole?
Yes.
Okay.
Fix my problem now, peasant.
But there are certain problems, like plumbers come the same day, because if you need a plumber,
because your house may get flooded.
I know.
If you have 10 ants, you're not going to die. Buy some Raid and spray them.
Okay, so you don't think that they should have? They
same
should
day
have
appointments?
Urgency to like fix people.
They should offer you a same day appointment at quadruple the price.
I'll pay it. They said that I don't off. Like I'm not saying that they shouldn't be compensated more. Plumbers are more expensive when they have to come the same day.
Again, a plumbing emergency is much more of an emergency.
Okay, but Andy, my situation may not be an emergency. In my wife's mind, it's World War III. Okay,
but in some mind, Raid and kill the ants.
I understand. The ants are dead. I killed them. What if it was a bigger? What if I had an ant hill? You're focusing on my problem, and my problem isn't dire enough where I might need him to come immediately. But what if it was? They do not offer it. That's the problem.
Right, because their business model is based on preventative maintenance, not acute
so if I had a
situations.
Wasp nest that was endangering my house, then what would I do? Just live with it until they come, or get a hotel? Like, I don't understand.
Buy some freaking wasp spray. What's wrong with you?
Oh man, yeah, I don't know.
Like, do you know how many wasp nests we have? Do you know, like where I live?
What do you do
with the level of bugs and the level of you're
a psychopath with a little like glasses and you just spray the thing? What are you, nuts? I don't.
Have you ever used wasp spray before? It goes like 20 feet. It's actually lots of fun.
Okay, but like I'm going to call a pest control company today, and one will come to my house and they will solve my problem. And when they do, I will compensate them. And I find it bizarre that the company that I have doesn't offer it.
Scott says, Ari, do we need to meet at Home Depot or Lowe's? I have been to Home Depot with Ari before. It is one of the most fun experiences ever. I went to Home Depot with Ari to buy a propane tank. It was amazing.
As someone who once worked for Terminix, sorry, but this is not an emergency, sir. Okay, listen, Andy, again, I understand that my specific instance is not an emergency. What I'm saying is if I were to have an emergency,
then maybe they would send somebody out.
I didn't even tell them the nature of my issue. I said we had a pest infestation. River was there. I need you to come into my house and fix it. Like, we don't offer same-day appointments. I hung up on them.
Well, you got to give them more specifics than that, because they probably hear that all the time. You know, my house is overrun with rats. Somebody's probably coming.
See,
I found 15 ants.
Okay,
nobody's coming.
Here's the thing that I want to know, though, just to appease my wife. So this will turn from ATIA to like, hey, chat, help me out here. My wife hates bugs. And like, she was like serious of like, do we need to get a hotel? Because I can't even sleep with the thought that an ant or like these flying red ants will land on my face. Like this, and I don't know if she's being dramatic, but in order to
you need to move out of Texas then.
No, but I'm saying is in order to get through the day and to appease her when she gets home, like, what's the solution to this? Do I
kill
go
the
to
ants?
Home Depot? The ants are dead and gone, but they keep.
Then there's no problem.
They keep showing up. If I go downstairs, where I killed the ants from will be more. Like there's an infestation.
Well, can you track them to where they're coming from and just shoot some spray into there?
They're in one room and they're in the other room, but they're everywhere. I don't know where they're coming from. I need a person who works in pest control to come tell me where they come from. I don't know what to do. How do I appease my wife? Somebody help me. I don't know what to do. I literally have no clue. It's not go get
raid. An exterminator. Clearly.
It's not as simple as go get raid and spray the area. Like, what do I do if I don't know where they're coming from? Outside of call the person who's in charge of, okay, so what do I type into YouTube? I have
Willie T with the greatest advice ever, because it's true. Everything can be solved with a YouTube video. Everything.
What would you type into YouTube? How do I find where
ant infestation? How do I find it? How do I find an ant infestation in my house? How do I find the source of an ant infestation? Well, let's do it. Let's Google it right now. How do I find the source of an ant infestation? All right, let's click the videos tab. Look at that. How to find ants in your house. Ants inspection. How to find where ants are coming from. How to get rid of ants. Kill ants in your home. Get rid of ants. Keep it easy.
How to figure out where ants are coming from videos. That's how I'm going to spend my Thursday. Rather than paying the person who works at a company that's designed to specialize in this.
Who's got other appointments? You're not that special.
I know. Okay, maybe ITIA. I don't know.
Hi, River.
Hey, he said, hey, my wife is really upset, and I need someone to come out here today, and I have 30 seconds before the show starts.
Yeah, big timing them like that is not helpful.
Yeah.
I'm not big time him. I thought honestly when I called in, I thought like, yeah, sure, we have your address on file. We'll send somebody out between 12 and 5. And I'll be like, okay.
Unreal stuff.
Yeah.
Raymond Horton goes, Ari grew up living the high class life. No, he didn't. That's the funny part about this. Ari did not grow up in a mansion. He just acts like he did.
Yeah. I grew up in a house where when you needed help, you called people who specialized in the problem. That's what happened. And like, I think that's a rational and okay place.
As a redneck who gets asked about NASCAR because of where he grew up, like we just live in a part of the country where like you try to figure it out first before you pay somebody. Now, the problem with that, this is where your philosophy may be better, is half the time when you try to figure it out at first, you cause a more expensive problem than you would have if you just hired somebody.
Yeah, that's my biggest fear in life.
It's how I end up on a ladder with a chainsaw yesterday, and not
yeah.
I didn't cut anything off that shouldn't have been cut off, but you know,
I'm seeing a lot
of stuff
that I appreciate. You guys are great, and I love that you're here. And if you think I am the a-hole, then I love you. But everyone is saying, "Hey, get ant traps." It's like, okay. That doesn't stop the problem. I want them to stop coming into my house. I don't want to.
If you put the ant traps in the correct place, it will. That's all the exterminator is going to do.
I want him to spray the entire house, and like every single ant that even looks at it dies. That's what I want.
Oh my God. Ari, I love you. I do.
Thank you.
I don't want to be in customer service when you call ever.
Yeah, but the first thing I'm going to do when we hang up is not Google and YouTube video. I'm going to call other extermination companies to come solve the problem. Because
Willie T's just full of helpful solutions. Move to Alaska, no ants. Done.
Yeah. But I'm also stressed because my wife is stressed about it, and that energy has been transferred onto me.
Christopher says, I would not get those traps. I would get boric acid. Ooh. Yeah, Ari and acid seem like a good mix too.
You live in Dallas. I'll just pay you directly to come over here and handle it. If you worked at Terminex, you're my guy. Just go. I'll give you my address off the show right now. You can fix it for me, and I'll pay you. I want to pay you my money to fix the problem. I'm not trying to take advantage of anybody. I want to patronize your business. That's the other thing I can't stand in life. Like when you have a business and you turn customers away. Like you're like,
if your business is going really well, and you can't serve every customer.
If they are so busy that they cannot come to my house today, then that means that they're leaving money on the table by not having a big enough workforce to service the community. Right?
Ari, I love the microeconomics lesson too.
Could you imagine if like we got to 10,000 listeners on live YouTube and then YouTube's like, sorry, 10,001, we don't have room for you today.
we got no bandwidth for you.
Is that what happened today to me? Is that not what happened?
Hey, listen, I'm watching the numbers climb on this segment. Like, we keep doing these. We may be at 100,000 live viewers.
People who are here to like listen, and Sailor Joe nailed it. This is it right here. I don't want to do it. Okay. I don't want to YouTube it. I don't want to go to Home Depot. I don't want to buy boric acid or to even get boric acid. I want somebody to come fix it.
Home Depot.
So I don't even know what that is. If I walk into Home Depot and ask for boric acid, would they think I'm Walter White trying to decompose a body in a tub? I don't know what that is. Okay. So like all your suggestions of what to do are things I don't want to do. I want somebody to help me that knows what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't want to pretend like I do. I'm not that guy, and I'm never going to be that guy, ever.
I love you, Ari.
Or X with sugar in it. Yeah, okay. Well, maybe I'll put it in my air fryer and see what happens.
We love you. It's Ari's All-America team tomorrow. Come yell at him some more.